Good afternoon. I'm Suki Pet, and you're listening to Now What on River West Radio, WXR WLP Milwaukee, 104.1 FM, and riverwestradio.com on your smartphone and streaming devices. Now, if I'm a little bit distracted, it's because I'm streaming video as well as audio, and it's my first time doing that, so I'm sort of like looking at myself talking while I'm talking to you, and that's kind of weird, so I'm going to try to not do that. But happy Friday. Happy Good News Friday. I will tell you why it is Good News Friday. First and foremost, to my friends in Wisconsin who are listening to this, Robin Vos is retiring. That's great news. And for those of you who don't know who he is, and consider yourselves lucky, he is the Speaker of the State House in Wisconsin. And he is, how shall I be polite on the air? A horror show. Absolute horror show. So he announced that he is not running for re-election, and I have no idea who will take his place or what particular horror show will get in his place, but at least it will be a new horror show. So that's number one. Number two, amazingly enough, the Supreme Court of the United States did the right thing today, and they ruled in a 6-3 decision against President Trump's tariffs, said they are unconstitutional, and that under the law of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, he does not have the power to unilaterally impose tariffs. And Trump has said, I guess on either on Truth Social or on some public announcement today, that he's very ashamed of them. And that he's going to figure out what his workaround is, which is always, kind of fun because they're supposed to be the Supreme Court. I've wondered what would happen if we all just started disobeying them. But in any case, today is a good day because they did the right thing. But with them, you're kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop because they have to do 10 wrong things to make up for the one right thing that they did. We don't know. We'll see. And the other bit of good news is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew of the British royal family, was arrested late on, was it Wednesday night or Thursday night? I guess it was late Wednesday into Thursday morning. He was arrested. I don't remember the exact phrasing of the charge, but it was, he was a trade envoy from the United Kingdom to the U.S., and he was often giving his basically insider information to Jeffrey Epstein and people in what we are now calling apparently the Epstein class. And, that was sort of, it's a serious crime. I think what he's been charged with is misconduct in office. But often, and obviously, I don't know what's going to happen in this case, and neither do you. We'll just have to watch it unfold. Often when someone is charged with something like misconduct in office or tax evasion or something that is financial and not necessarily salacious or vile, it's just a crime. That often leads, as the investigation unfolds, and if there should be a trial that gets underway and more information comes out, that can often lead to charges about other things in other areas. At the present time, the former prince has not been charged with any crimes related to sexual abuse, although the late Virginia Giuffre spoke in detail both in her memoir, Nobody's Girl, which I highly recommend reading, as well as to her family members and in depositions, etc., had said that she was trafficked to then Prince Andrew more than once. He's denied it, but there is a picture of them together when she was 17 or younger. So we're going to have to see how this all unfolds. I can't predict the future, neither can you. We can have theories, we can, brainstorm or conspiracy theory storm, if you want to call it that. We can hypothesize, but at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen. We just have to sort of wait that one out. But so, all in all, I think it's been a rather, good news Friday. And I wanted to say that I took some time away from watching the news this week. I'm not saying I was completely not watching it, but I traded in my evening MS Now panels to watch on HGTV The Ugliest House in America. And I have been binge watching it and absolutely loving it because it's totally fun and totally weird. And Retta, who is the host, who was on Parks and Rec, is great. But so you can guess what the premise is. People have these weird houses that are ugly or inconvenient or, look like they're made out of macaroni and popsicle sticks or duct taped together or whatever. So people have these weird houses. They apply, they send in pictures of their home, I guess a video, who knows, to the show. If the show's interested, they come out and meet you, look at your house, and then there are finalists from all the regions of the lower 48 states. I have yet to see them do any homes in Alaska or Hawaii, but maybe they will. I haven't watched all the seasons yet. But so they come out and look at your home, and at the end of a season, they choose one home that they are going to redo. They have a $150,000 budget, and it's at that point that Retta brings Allison Victoria, who is a Chicago-based home rehabber. She comes in with her team of craftspeople and work people, and you also see her shopping for different, like chandeliers or furniture or whatever. And so in some cases, the people have not yet moved into their home. Either they were planning to renovate it and then realized they got in over their heads, or they heard about this show, or they're having a baby and they don't have the time or whatever. Some of the time, though, I have to say that you got to wonder why people bought these homes. I mean, some of the people say, like they bought the home for the view because the home is right on the water, or it has a beautiful mountain view, or it's on, 20 exquisite acres. You never know what the asking price of the house was, what the people paid for it. You don't really hear anything about that stuff. I would be interested to know, because I'm assuming that some of the buyers bought these homes because they were really cheap because people just wanted to move them. But again, I don't know. Some of them have a lot of charm. Some of them look incredibly impossible. One of the things that I'm not buying, though, that seems a little odd to me as well, I certainly understand wanting to have a beautiful view or being right next to the water, or, having a bunch of acres that you could make a humongous garden or orchard or whatever on. you probably are not going to buy it just for that, because you're not going to be living in the outside 24/7. I mean, you might be out there a lot of the time, but you've also got to like make food in your kitchen and, you know, wash your pajamas in your laundry and bathe and do all the normal things. And some of these houses, like one of the things, and I sort of remember this from the 70s, but I don't remember seeing any quite this extreme. Some of these houses had these really huge sunken bathtubs, and they were like almost the size of, say, a hot tub, like maybe not quite as big as a hot tub, but maybe a tub where like 3 or 4 people could fit in a bath relatively comfortably. But they're all tiled, and often you have to walk down a few stairs, and there's nothing to hold on to, not even a towel rack. And so, like, you're getting in and out of this wet, tiled place that looks and sounds like it would be rather precarious. And another theme that I noticed on this show that's really bizarre is people seem to use carpet remnants as sort of a fashion accessory slash, I don't know, room accent. And they often seem to use it in rooms that are damp, like bathrooms. Quite a few of these homes had these big bathtubs, and on the outside of the bathtub, and in one case, even the faucet of the bathtub came through these pieces of carpet. And like, in what universe is having wall-to-wall carpet on your actual bathtub slash shower? In what universe is that a good idea? I read something like, carpet can hold something like 200,000 bacteria per square inch or something gross like that. I mean, I don't even like carpet just on the floor in bathrooms. And then you may remember, if you were around in the 60s and 70s, people went through this phase where not only did they have the bathroom carpeted, but there was like a cutout piece of carpet to go around the bottom of the toilet, and then there was often a matching piece of carpet to go on top of the toilet tank, as almost as if you wanted to obscure the entire apparatus, even though that's like one of the main reasons we have bathrooms in our homes. So, but the show is really fun. It's very good natured. The people who have these weird houses know they have these weird houses. And what's kind of interesting about that, and that Eric and I were talking about last night, is that usually in the case of these weird houses, one person in the couple fell absolutely madly in love with the house, and the other most assuredly did not fall in love with the house. They hated it, but somehow they ended up buying it. And Eric and I were talking about that because we've lived in quite a few places and looked for, quite a few places to live in our time together. And we have never really disagreed on a place. Like, when we've looked at a place and found it lacking, we were usually in complete agreement about that. Like, it was too small, or it was too hot, or it was too something. And but we have yet to have a situation where one of us absolutely loves the place and the other one of us thinks the first one who loves the place is absolutely nuts. I mean, we might have that reaction about other things. He might like a piece of furniture that I despise. That happens. I know that when we were watching some of the Ugliest House stuff together on Wednesday night, um, this one family had this bizarre living room, and they had what initially looked like this ginormous sectional couch, but it turned out to be that it wasn't a sectional couch at all. It was like 10 recliners, um, like smushed together so they looked like a couch. And then when people started sitting in them, it was kind of like being in a fancy movie theater where you can lean back and put your feet up. And Eric was getting a little misty eyed over all of that. And, if we're ever living in a place big enough where he can have his own study, then he can have an ugly, lazy boy in there. But I don't want to look at one in my living room. And he'd probably never get to sit in it anyway because it would be full of cats. So, but the show is fun, and it's mind candy, but it's not stupid. It's fun to look inside of all these weird different houses that you would probably never otherwise get to see. And I don't usually like renos that are done on TV shows because I think they look too staged, like no one has ever lived there or could live there, or couldn't live there with children who like to run around and be kids, or with dogs or cats or any other pets you might have. And I also think that a lot of these designers use way too much white in the furniture. I mean, I barely will wear a white t-shirt because it will stay white for about 5 minutes before I spill coffee on it. And it's even worse with white furniture, especially when you have cats or a dog or a kid, especially a little one. But so I that's not my personal taste, but it does sort of like brighten things up. It's just interesting to see, some of these houses that I was binge watching on seasons 2 and 3 last night. It would be like, okay, I want to take this room from that house and the bathroom from that house, and the pirate ship. There was this one wild thing where this couple who was expecting a baby decided to buy their first home, but what their first home was, well, what it had been before they bought it was a preschool. So there was a lot of space. They said at one point they wanted to turn part of it into a community center, which is admirable. If it were up to me and I wanted to start some sort of community organization, I wouldn't necessarily want it on top of the place that I also lived with my family, because you could never sort of get away, and you wouldn't necessarily want everyone who came to the community center to also know where you lived. So this place had been a preschool. It was very obvious, like by the height of the sinks and toilets in the kids' bathroom, as well as the fact that it was a pretty big preschool. And as they went through it, there were like 5 or 6 rooms, each a fairly large room. And then one corner of the room had a chair and, one rather large chair and a carpeted area, which was for story hour. And I have, fond memories of going to story hour at local public library when I was a little kid and sitting on a carpeted surface like that. But trying to figure out how you would turn that into something resembling a home. Now, this particular couple's plan was that they were thinking of living in the basement of this place, and the whole, ground floor that had been the actual school was going to be the community center. It would be interesting to know what happens with that, because like upstairs there was a lot of room. It was big. There was a lot of room and a lot of light, and the basement did not have much light. It did have a lot of room, but not necessarily nice room. And there were, built-in things that could have been repurposed to be useful. And the couple had started trying to take out, there were some metal lockers sort of built into the wall, and they were trying without success to take the lockers out, and they were able to, cut through the wall, um, so you could see from one room to another room. Um, but then they had to sort of give up because it was just a little too much. Then there were these people in Florida. It was a couple and their two teenage daughters, and they lived in this sort of, well, it wasn't sort of, it was an octagon house, which seemed to have been sort of a thing in the 60s and the 70s. There were some cool things about the house. It had a lot of light. It had some nice features. But one of the many not nice features is the walls in the house didn't intersect with the ceiling, so there was not really any privacy. I mean, you might have, say, the master bedroom would have like a 2 feet gap between the ceiling and the wall. And so if you were in the living room or walking through the living room, you could hear everything that was going on in the master bedroom. And apparently that made for some very awkward moments between when the boyfriend of the elder teenage daughter was walking through the living room at an inopportune time for her parents. So, when I see things like that, I think, okay, this house is cool, but you knew it didn't exactly have functioning walls when you bought it. And, I hope against hope that the people who bought these homes were not like being so wildly foolish, that they were buying them on the hope that they would get on this show and get their house redone, because that would be a bit much. Because what if you don't get on? I mean, what if you buy a house that you know that you don't really have the money to afford to be able to redo, or you don't have the skills, or you don't have the time? The Octagon House people said they had been turned down by multiple contractors, because nobody just wanted to touch that job, because it was going to be these sort of weird, like you might go 2 steps up to get into a room, and then to get out of the room there's another door, and you go 2 steps down and 2 steps up. They're like these, one house had like 7 levels, but some of them were only a few steps high. Another house, these people in New Mexico built a few geodesic domes next to each other, and they rented a couple out as Airbnbs or something, and then they lived in the littlest one, and it was really, really, really strange. It's the kind of thing that, like, if you're going on vacation and you got an Airbnb to stay in a geodesic dome for a couple of days, that might be sort of cool, but I sure as hell wouldn't want to live in one. And so at the top of the dome, there's like a little platform, where you can go up there and look, and you have 360-degree views. But to get up to that little platform, and you can't really, like, you can't stand upright in it. You have to sort of like sit up, or crawl around. So the lady was showing the show people that to get up to this little area, she had to stand on her bedside table and sort of pull down a ladder that was in the floor to get up there. It was all very convoluted and difficult. Then there was another couple, I forget which house this was, where they had some really antiquated, maybe it was the geodesic dome, antiquated hot water heater inside, and it took so long for the hot water to fill up and to get hot and stay hot that only one person could bathe or shower each day. Now, that's a little bit too funky for me. That's just not, I don't want that much camping out experience in my own home. Um, but like I said, it's fun to see all these houses. It's fun to see the people. They're usually pretty good natured about it. I saw some threads. I was reading about the show and I saw some threads today about people getting mad saying, did they buy these houses? Like, who buys a house for a view? Actually, a lot of people do buy houses for views. My personal query is, did any of the people who bought these houses buy them solely with the intent of getting on this show to have their house redone? And I also couldn't help but to wonder, did any of these people have inspectors come to their homes? Or were these just like sort of cheap cash sales because the houses had been on the market so long that, people were willing to take a hit on the price? In one or two cases, it said that people paid, a certain percentage more than the asking price, which surprised me. Then there was this one house in Colorado that had been sort of patched together by, I think they said he was an engineer. And it was right next to this huge red rock. And then when you get inside the house, you discover that the house is built around the rock and the rock is actually inside the house. That wouldn't do it for me either. I would like to choose the rocks that went in my house rather than having the house built around them. Some of the houses just didn't look really habitable. They looked like they might make an interesting gallery or place to have drinks, but there was this one, I think it was in California, that it was metal and glass and vaguely shaped like a dog. It was a sculpture, and it had beautiful windows and views, and it was interesting to sit in, but like all these like metal stairs, and it had a very cold feel to it, plus the fact that the stairs and stuff were very, very steep, and it would be a hard place to live in. Again, maybe a nice place to go sit and look at the sunset and have a glass of wine, but not a place to live in. Also, so much glass, no privacy. I mean, they were sort of out in the middle of nowhere, but still. I want to remind you that I am Suki Pet, and you're listening to Now What on River West Radio, WXRWLP Milwaukee 104.1 FM, and riverwestradio.com on your streaming devices. I will see you next week at the same time. And remember to stay tuned to River West Radio, where the world experiences River West at WXRWLP Milwaukee 104.1 FM. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope your Friday is good. Let's hope for more good news coming our way. We've certainly earned it. And stay tuned to River West Radio, WXRWLP Milwaukee 104.1 FM. I'm Suki Pet, signing off.